Well, it's time now for the big question in which we tackle a major news story of the day. Tonight, following an explosion in online romantic hookups during lockdown, should we rethink our attitude to the idea of having an affair? Ashley Madison, the online dating service tailored to people who are already married or in relationships, announced this week that Salford and Manchester are the most adulterous places in Britain. So are open relationships becoming the new normal? Are they desirable? Has adultery become acceptable? Well, to debate this, I'm delighted to welcome Lucy Beresford, a relationship expert and psychotherapist, Armin Brott, a US family values and parenting author, David McIntosh, a former Royal Marines commando and reality star, and speaking of stars, adult movie actress Brooklyn Blue. Great to have all four of you with me. Let me start, if I can, with you, Lucy. Is adultery still wrong?
Well, it isn't necessarily my place to pass judgment on something like that. But what we have noticed is that increasingly people are putting their relationship fulfillment as a priority, particularly probably after the pandemic and the number of lockdowns that led many people who were at home with their loved ones ended up seeing those people as not quite so loved ones. And I think people came out of the pandemic thinking, okay, so how do I want my relationship to be? How do I want my sex life or my love life to be going forward? And if you think that many of us could live to over 100, that means that quite a lot of people in their 40s or 50s, maybe even younger in their 30s, are saying, is this relationship working for me? And if it isn't, what am I going to do about it? And I think that shines a spotlight on whether monogamy is what people are really looking for in the 21st century.
David McIntosh, is monogamy, is having one partner for life unnatural?
Well, let me be straight, Mark, to be honest. I'm a realist, I'm not a saint. Let me say that first and foremost. But let's look at the negative connotations that come forth or spring forth from such a debaucherous notion. Fatherless, motherless children. And let's go forward to a more sinister aspects of it. Domestic violence, suicide, all these things come from adultery. So for anyone to sit there and say adultery is fine, or we should push forward into a more adultery or not monogamy, polygamy, that's sick. That is a twisted view. That is really a twisted view.
So you think that actually if the state and if society gets, sort of down with the idea of adultery, if it becomes acceptable, that's going to be bad for the country?
Well, of course, it's the end of family life. And I jest, but young Johnny Rocket or Sue Ryder is not going to be happy if Lexington Steele or someone else comes around on the weekend and is playing father figure. Do you know what I mean? It's like, come on, let's be real. If adultery happens or polygamy is, left to run riot, there's going to be no family. The family values are going to be crushed. They're going to be finished. It's going to be done. Okay? And love is not going to exist. And love is the ultimate power of life.
Armin Brott, you are a family values and parenting author. You were nodding your head there at what David had to say.
Well, I agree with him completely. I think adultery is perfectly fine from the perspective of the person who's having the adulterous affair, because they're in some sort of ecstasy of self-gratification, and they really don't care about anybody else. But from the perspective of the person who's being cheated on, it's a terrible thing to do. And I can say that as somebody who had a wife cheat on him. It really is absolutely a miserable way to treat people. And it comes from this tremendous self-centeredness that my feelings are more important. I'm not feeling fulfilled, therefore I can do whatever I want. If you're not feeling fulfilled, get a divorce, break up like a normal person, and go start a new relationship. But when you start a relationship with somebody else, when you're in another relationship with somebody who trusts you, who loves you, who has exposed them to their most inner feelings, you are absolutely destroying another person. And as the guest just said just a second ago, what about the kids? You're showing the kids that you can just walk in and out of relationships anytime you want. I'm not a prude about these things, but I think if you'd want to end a relationship, end the thing. But think about the person whose life you are destroying and the kids whose lives you are destroying before you start hopping into bed with somebody else.
Armin, I'm really sorry to hear about your situation. Did your wife's
It was
adultery end the relationship?
absolutely. It was the end of the trust. That was it. I felt I could no longer trust this person. And I have trust is a big thing for me. And I think it's a big thing for everybody. And if she would have said, look, we're not getting along, I'm not feeling fulfilled, whatever it is, I love the guy across the street, I would say, fine, let's get a divorce and we'll move on and we'll explain this to the kids. But when you go off and, she did in the middle of dinner, would get up, walk out of the house and go across the street to be with her boyfriend. It was just humiliating, and it was unnecessary to do that to me. And it's not only me. I mean, this is happening all over the place. You humiliate the other person, and you put them in a terrible spot. So I just think it's a question of, we've lost in our society these days common decency about how to treat other people. And this is my used to have these conversations with people I would be with teachers in my kids' school, that I don't care if they can't quite get the 4 times table or something else. If they haven't figured out how to treat other people, they have no business learning anything else. And that's what it really comes down to. I have no problem with people breaking up relationships and going off and starting something new. It's how you end it and what you put the other people, your children, your spouse, everybody else in your family through.
Brooklyn Blue, you are an adult movie star. Do you think open relationships are the way to go?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, adultery in itself is wrong. I do not agree with it. I think it is completely wrong. There are some relationships out there that agree between themselves to have an open relationship. I'm not one of them, but there is couples that do it. And I think if you as a couple can make a decision between yourself and you agree your own boundaries between yourself, then I don't see a problem with that. But I think each relationship has their own rules and their own boundaries. But to cross other people's boundaries and to cross your partner's boundaries is completely wrong. As far as I'm concerned, adultery is wrong. But the open relationship thing, I mean, there's a lot of people that are doing that. And I think along the adultery side, I think it's just society in itself. It's just got easier for people to do it. I mean, I like the old traditional value, where years ago people got married and they stayed together forever and they were always just them two. And it was harder for people to go off with other people. Then now you've got social media and you've got this and you've got that. And it's so much more accessible for people to go off and cheat. And it is wrong. And I don't agree with it. And I've been cheated on and it's horrible. But I think as well as that, people that want to do the open relationship thing, if that's an agreement between them both and they're both happy with that, then there's not a problem with that. But you've got to have your own rules within your relationship and you've got to stick to those rules. Do not break the rules between your own relationship.
But Brooklyn Blue, why does it matter who your partner sleeps with as long as they come back to you at night?
I mean, I don't know, because in my relationship, we don't have an open relationship at all. So ours is completely closed off. It's just us. But obviously work is different. But I think people that are in open relationships, I mean, I can understand why some of them do it. Some people, that is what they're into, and some men can't. I think some men find it difficult to stick to one woman, and women can be the same. And this is why you have, clubs out there where, swingers and all this kind of thing. It does go on. And I think if you have them rules within your relationship and you both agree to that, that could actually potentially stop your partner cheating if you both agree to that within your relationship. As far as I know, I think that's what I would say on that. But like I said, my relationship's completely closed off, and I don't do any of that. But which sounds bizarre because I know I do adult movies for a living, so everyone finds that totally strange. But I think that's how it is.
Well, Brooklyn, without being too personal about it, what is the difference between adultery and starring in an adult movie? Because if I starred in an adult movie, never say never, I've just got to hit my target weight, I don't think Mrs. Dolan would take too kindly to it.
Yeah, I mean, I get asked this a lot. It is. I mean, within our relationship, I've been in the adult industry for 10 years. When my husband met me, he knew what I did, and he accepted that. And like, I go to work and I pay the bills with what I do, and my husband goes to work and he pays the bills with what he does. And on set, we're actors, you know, we are acting out a scene, we're acting out a fantasy. We even have scripts. It is completely different to what you actually watch online. It's very, very different in reality. And I always say, if you like that kind of thing online, never come to a real set, because you'd be severely disappointed in the reality of it. But it's kind of, obviously, that's for us is work, and that's work, and we're both allowed to go and work. However, if one of us was to cheat in our personal life, that would be completely off limits, and it would end in a divorce.
Lucy, can open relationships work?
Well, only if both parties agree. And that's the problem. If you haven't had ground rules, if you haven't had that initial conversation about what the unspoken or uncoded rules are going to be in your relationship, then that will spell trouble. The key question is, can relationships survive infidelity? And my theory is that they can. So I did a TED talk on whether infidelity, should you stay or should you go? And whilst for very many people, they imagine before it happens to them that they would say, oh, definitely, one strike and you're out. I would never countenance staying. But if you are emotionally invested in your partner and you discover that they have betrayed you, that puts you in a very different position. And you suddenly have to confront whether you want to end everything or rebuild it. Now, even if, so a couple creates the couple, I think we can all agree. And therefore, even if your partner is the person who has betrayed you and is therefore on some level 99% responsible for the pain that you are now wading through at the moment, that still leaves 1% for you to look at and explore and really examine what was it about your current relationship that left it vulnerable for being perhaps attacked by infidelity or betrayal. And what I have seen in the clients that I've worked with, not if it's a repeat offence. Let's be clear. If you are married to someone who traduces the rules over and over again, then at that point you have to protect yourself and walk away. But if it's a one-off adulterous affair, or if it was maybe a one-night stand, actually you can talk about it and really work with your partner to get them, it's their responsibility to repair that breach of trust, to repair the damage that they have caused. But the two of you need to look at what led your relationship to be vulnerable to an affair in the first place.
Yes, I mean, look, here's the question, David. Do you think that we are getting more and more liberal about sex? Is that the direction of travel in society?
Oh, yeah, 100%, 120% what you just said there, Mark. Let's only briefly look onto Instagram and Facebook, and the one that sticks in everyone's mind is OnlyFans. Girls are going on online now, and yet celebrities doing the same thing as well, advocating. I'm empowering my sexual self now and taking back my femininity by getting in OnlyFans. Like, hold up a minute. No one will see you naked unless you went on OnlyFans. So now there's 18-year-olds. They're all getting on there because it's easy cash. It's easy. And I'm not going against, sorry, I'm not going to, it's nothing about you. It's nothing about this, are you? But this is becoming a normal society. Women just slaughter themselves, these sites that are taking advantage and showing easy cash. So when that's going out more, it's just a sign of where times are going.
Yes, I mean, David, have you had a few relationships in your life?
I've had quite a few. And like I said before, I'm a realist. I'm not a saint. And I think people, when they say they don't mind being open relationships, a lot of them are liars. They like to be in an open relationship only if the other person is being faithful.
Well, yeah, that's always the point, isn't it? Armin, you are a spokesman for the Men's Health Network. You're also known as Mr. Dad. Your latest book has become a bestseller. It's called The New Father, A Dad's Guide to the Toddler Years. So tell me about the impact on families of adultery.
Well, I think just despite what Lucy said, I think that it tends to destroy relationships. And I think when it creates a situation where parents are getting divorced and where kids are being left in the lurch, or kids are not understanding why it is that their parents are getting divorced, or they're taking an example from this is how you treat women, or this is how you treat men, depending on which of the spouses is cheating. I think it sets a bad example, and it causes a lot of trauma for kids. There's no question about it. There's a lot of research about this, that kids of divorce tend to do worse than kids whose parents have stayed together. Obviously, there's cases of abuse and all sorts of other examples that can happen, but on average, kids do better when they have a mom and dad in their life. So I think it's a bad thing for family. But I think Brooklyn is absolutely right that despite you kind of chuckle when you hear her talk a little bit about her relationship, and it sounds odd. But when you have rules, and when you make rules and you stick by the rules, you're just respecting the person that you're with. And when one person breaks the rules, it's a sign of disrespect. And so I think, if you want to have a relationship with somebody else, go ahead. But I think what I've seen in my life, and I haven't done this myself, but I've seen with other people, is that couples talk about an open relationship. There's usually one person who's much more interested in it than the other. And it can change quite quickly when it becomes something that, oh, it's just sex. Well, it becomes, maybe it's not just sex, then it becomes an emotional relationship, and then that's a problem. I mean, Brooklyn can say, okay, so the just sex part, you can do that, but if she became suddenly attached to one of her co-stars in an emotional way, I'm sure that would be a problem at home. And so it really messes with the family life. It messes with home life. We are changing. We're a society where marriage is much less common than it was before. What used to be called out of wedlock births are much more common than they were before. But despite all that, kids do better. And that's, for me, my perspective, what it's all about when you have a family, is kids do better when their parents are together. And if you are willing to put your own self-interest before your kids' self-interest, and you want to go off and sleep with somebody, think about what you're doing to your kids.
Armin Brock, do you think that adultery should be a social taboo, a bit like, I don't know, drink driving?
It's hard to say that. I think, I don't know, when I hear about somebody who cheats on his wife, I'm less likely to go out and want to have a beer with that person, just because I don't really support that particular type of thing. It's my own personal views on this subject. I just happen to disapprove of that. I wouldn't do it to somebody else. It's been done to me, as I mentioned before, and it doesn't feel good. And when I see somebody who's willing to treat people badly, and that's just one way of treating people badly, there are all sorts of other ways. I mean, if I were having a beer with a friend who started swearing at the waitress, or cut somebody off in traffic and treats people badly, I would want to spend less time with that person. So I think we can't pass laws about this, but I think individuals are going to make decisions about who they want to hang out with and what types of behavior they want to support.
David, Ken has emailed the show. What's missing from this discussion is morals. Do you think morality comes into it?
100%. I will say that, Matt. I'm a man of God. And I think society is literally, the moral backbone has become weakened over time. And that's helped up by celebrities, people who are speaking out. A lot of people, the media moguls and whatnot, the moral compass in them is off kilter. So a lot of young people are looking up to people, and these people looking up to you have got no moral backbone. So with these young kids, when the parents are out working, the parents don't have time to build them up. They're going to YouTube, they're going to Instagram, they're going to watch celebrities. These celebrities, they're not preaching anything of righteousness or solidarity. So it's troubling times. It's very troubling times.
Last word on this, Brooklyn. Do you think that we are getting more permissive as a society? Do you think that we should go back to the old days in the 1950s when you chose your partner at about the age of 17 or 18 and you stuck with them for life?
I mean, I love the tradition of that. It is such a lovely idea, but I think nowadays it's just so unrealistic, isn't it? And I mean, there is a lot more sort of accessible, sort of like I was saying earlier, the social media, it does entice people more, and it isn't great what's out there. But at the same time, I mean, I think it doesn't necessarily mean that more people will cheat because of how social media is now. I think that if you're a decent person and you're a moral person, you're still not going to cheat no matter what pressures come towards you or what anyone puts on you. You're not going to break that rule. I think if you were going to cheat, you're going to cheat anyway. You don't need Instagram to do it with. Yes, it may be a bit more accessible, and yes, it may still be a bit more out there in your face that you can just access it at a click of a button. But I don't necessarily think that means that more people would cheat. I think that if you're going to do that, you would have found a way to do that regardless of whether Instagram was there or not. I mean, back in like history, I mean, of course, back in the 50s and that, men probably or women probably still cheated. You just didn't hear about it or see it as much, and it was kept a lot more quiet. I think it's, if you're a moral person and you trust your relationship and you have the rules within your relationship and you keep within them rules, no matter what pressures are put on you, it does not mean that you'd break them. I don't think it would necessarily make you become a cheater because it's there in your face.
I would just briefly ask you, Brooklyn, why you are monogamous. What's the point?
I mean, I'm monogamous. I'm actually confused on that one.
You know, the idea that you've just got one sexual partner in your life. Why are you faithful to your husband? What's the point in it, in being faithful?
I mean, because we're married, I have my work life and I have my personal life. And my work life, I go to work, I do my acting, I do my job, and I come home. My personal life is completely different. I mean, I have my real life and I have my work life. And obviously we're married in our personal life and we have a very normal relationship in our real life. I mean, our real life is just like any other couple out there, any other married couple out there, and you would never suspect anything else.
Armin, what apart from obviously watching your film work, Armin, what is the point in monogamy? Why limit ourselves to one partner for life? What's to be gained?
What's to be gained from limiting? I think you have a sense of trust and you build a relationship and you build a life together.
It's a bit boring though, isn't it? It's very repetitive.
It can be boring, but you can try to do things to spice things up. You can take vacations, you can try different positions, you can do different kinds of stuff. But all right. But deciding that you're just going to go off and sleep with somebody else, I think tends to upset the emotional balance of it. And I think it's the emotional connection that really most couples would agree that's what keeps you going. I mean, couples like my parents are in their 80s and they're still laughing together and everything. They're probably not having a lot of sex, but they've got a lot of shared history and a lot of trust and a lot of understanding. I wish they were, or maybe they are. It's none of my business. But
no, well, thank God they did a few years ago because we've got you to show for it. I'm delighted to say, Armin. Briefly, David, what are your thoughts about this? What is the point in having one partner? Where's the payback?
Well, it's not a payback for you. It's a payback for your legacy, your children. Because I'm sure the children wouldn't want you, bouncing around, partner to partner. So like I said, it's an unselfish act. It's not for you. Of course, people like to go sleeping around. Unselfish act. It's not for you. It's for your children. And that's what it is. And beyond anything else, when you're with one partner, the love grows and it's deeper and it's more. And the grass isn't always green on the other side. You might think it is, but it's not. Let's be honest, it isn't. So yeah, do it for the children, not for yourself. I repeat, do it for the children, not for yourself.
Okay, brilliantly put. Full disclosure, I'm in an open relationship. I just haven't mentioned it to Mrs. Dolan yet. So good luck with that when I get home. Listen, let me tell you that Armin Brott is known as Mr. Dad in the United States, a best-selling author and a spokesman for the Men's Health Network. His latest book It's called The New Father, A Dad's Guide to the Toddler Years. Also, my thanks to David McIntosh, a former Royal Marines commando, reality star and a very good friend of this programme, and another good friend of this show, adult movie star and broadcaster Brooklyn Blue. Brooklyn, great to see you again. And unfortunately, we lost the line to the brilliant Lucy Beresford, who is a relationship expert and psychotherapist. What do you think? Has adultery become acceptable? Mark at gbnews.uk. Well, 30.2% of you say yes, adultery is now acceptable, but 69.8%, 69, that's an unfortunate figure, say no.